Our story begins with our protagonist shopping at the grocery store, while the news reports to everyone that there have recently been many cases of animal injuries in Z City. Citizens are urged to avoid going out at night, but relevant authorities are now investigating, so they shouldn't panic. Dozens of people have been infected with influenza by an unknown virus in X City. X Media will continue to follow up and report the situation. But our protagonist was just busy looking at the tuna, thinking that there is no harm in stocking up on canned foods while busy listening on his earphones. One of the women in the store told her friend that the old man of the Lai family, who is usually in good health, had an emergency a few days ago and died instantly. The woman's friend asked if it could be because of influenza too, and the woman replied that it was right, and the old man couldn't even last 2 days. The woman also told her friend that the world was really not peaceful those days. A moment later, he put his groceries in his truck and checked carefully to make sure he had brought seeds, instant meals, frozen foods, meat, daily necessities, snacks, canned food, and other stuff. He thought he just had to add some more diesel, and he was done. He also knew that he must hurry home to cook for Han because there is still the deer he hunted in the morning to deal with. While he was driving home, his girlfriend called him, and he answered. She called him Tian and asked if he had considered her previous proposal. He replied that he could find a job that allowed him to hold his head high in front of outsiders, to which she replied, okay. But he told his girlfriend that he was not going to send Lai Han to an orphanage. Lai Han angrily told him that she was not related to him by blood and he shouldn't talk to her about marriage if he is going to bring a child with him. He still told her that Lai Han is his sister and an important family member, which made his girlfriend upset, and she asked him why she should raise such a child as her daughter for nothing. She also told him that she has suffered enough with him, and if he doesn't take her seriously, they shouldn't get married, and they should break up. He replied, all right, and was about to say something, but something appeared in front of him and he hit it with his truck, making him cuss in shock. He was forcefully pushed to the front, and he knew that the thing was actually rushing straight in front of his car, making him wonder if it was a dog. But he noticed that it looked like a sheep. The sheep stood up, even though it was severely injured, but its eyes were red, making him shocked, knowing that it was hit on the head, but it was still alive. The sheep walked away from the road and went into the bush. He just looked at it in silence and turned his gaze back to the road, thinking that he should forget it because it was better to leave it there and not report it to the traffic police. A moment later, he arrived at their home and began to take out the groceries from his truck. Then, someone called him brother, making him look back and see a little girl with 2 dogs running toward him. The little girl was amazed that he bought a lot of stuff and told him that she also came to help move them. He gave her a small plastic bag of food, and they started walking toward their home. She told him that she had accomplished all the tasks he had given her, including adding fodder to the cowshed, changing the water, and watering the crops. She also mentioned that she was so tired and needed to eat stew made by her big brother to feel better. He agreed and suggested making some carrot and venison stew for her hungry stomach, to which she agreed. They continued talking, making him smile. However, one of the dogs started eating grass on the side, and she gently tapped its head while calling it Xiaobai to let it know it can't eat the crops. Then they continued to walk happily. On the side, there were sheep footprints, and the cow, busy eating grass in its fence, was looking at them with red eyes. Later, she told him that she had never seen a solar eclipse before and asked if it was true that the sky would turn completely dark like in the evening. Meanwhile, the radio informed them that the most spectacular total solar eclipse of the century was just around the corner, as promised. She happily exclaimed that the stew was delicious while eating and mentioned that not only had her big brother's hunting skills improved, but his cooking skills had also gotten better. He told her that it wouldn't turn completely dark, just that the sun would get darker, so she needed to wear the glasses he gave her to see it. The radio announced that the countdown would begin. When the radio began counting down, she pointed outside and asked him what was happening. He stood up in shock, looking at the dark blue moon outside. And when the countdown reached 0, their electricity disappeared. She fearfully asked him what was wrong with the power outage and said it was so cold. Suddenly, the dog started barking continuously, and the radio emitted an unknown loud noise. Then she fearfully pointed to somewhere and told her big brother to look at it, which he did, and he quickly came out of their home, surprised to see that it was snowing. She asked him what was with the blizzard in the middle of summer, but he just told her to go back to the house quickly because he would lock up the cattle and sheep. He assured her that he would be right back and told Xiaobai to stay back and take good care of Han, to which it barked in agreement. Han worriedly told him to hurry up because it was cold outside, and he reassured her not to worry. He then called the other dog, Xiaohai, to come with him. He began to walk in the stormy blizzard with Xiaohai and asked if it was all right. Suddenly, the dark moon shone brightly, momentarily blinding him, and then it lit up like a sun in the stormy blizzard. He looked up at the shining dark moon in the sky, wondering how it could be. Suddenly, Xiao Hai noticed something while he was lost in thought about the strange plants, blizzard, and the sun. Xiao Hai barked angrily at something and jumped behind him. He dodged a bull behind him in shock. Xiao Hai attacked the bull behind him, causing it to turn around and see Xiao Hai attacking. He immediately ran away, knowing his compound bow should be nearby, and fortunately, he spotted it right away. The bull threw Xiao Hai away, and he aimed at it in frustration. However, he noticed a blue target light in front of him, which left him confused and wondering about its origin. He released the arrow, which flew toward the bull and hit it in the face, making it scream in pain. He felt excited that he had hit the bull and thought it should be dead now, but the bull didn't go down. Instead, it charged furiously toward him, causing him to panic and shout that it wasn't dead yet. As he reached for more arrows, he realized he was out of ammunition. The system displayed the message that the number of ammunition was 0 and the number of living bodies within range was 3, which left him momentarily confused. However, he understood he needed to act quickly. When he tried to grab an arrow, he couldn't believe that he was truly out. Suddenly, the bull appeared in front of him and struck him, throwing him away. He coughed in pain while Xiao Hai tried to pull him away. He looked at Xiao Hai, who was barking and pointing toward their house, making him realize that Xiao Hai was signaling that the danger was coming from their house. Since the bull had mutated, Han was not safe anymore. On the other hand, Xiao Bai was growling at Han in anger, making Han ask what was wrong with it. Xiao Bai continued to growl and lunged at her. Fortunately, Tian Ran arrived in time and kicked Xiao Bai away from her. He was frustrated that even Xiao Bai had changed. He told Han that he would take her to the safe house, where she should hide and not come out because it was still dangerous outside. Han expressed concern for Xiao Bai, but he explained that Xiao Bai was dangerous now. She should listen to her big brother and never come out. He ran outside, holding Han in his arms, and headed for the farmhouse. He did his best to reach their farmhouse, but then the system popped up in front of him, confirming that it wasn't an illusion. He saw that the number of living bodies within range was 4. He placed Han inside the farmhouse and urged her to get inside quickly, emphasizing that no matter what happened, she should not come out and should trust in her brother. The system showed him that the number of living bodies within range was 5. When he slammed the door shut, Xiao Bai attacked him from behind, causing him to growl and kneel in pain. Han worriedly called her brother inside, and Xiao Hai attacked Xiao Bai, making him praise Xiao Hai. He ran away while instructing Xiao Hai, who was defending against Xiao Bai, to hold on because he would come to its aid after dealing with the bull chasing him. He grabbed the nearby axe, turned around, and faced the bull. The bull attacked, but he jumped to the side, causing the bull to hit the tree behind him. The bull's horn got stuck in the tree, and he raised his axe to attack it, telling it to go to hell. However, Xiao Bai bit him on the neck. He was worried that Xiao Hai was killed, knowing that he couldn't die yet. Then the bull freed itself and pierced its horn into his side, making him cough up blood. Suddenly, he heard something continuously, which annoyed him, and he wondered why it was so noisy. The system showed him that the apocalypse survival game was matching, but he couldn't see it clearly and reminded himself not to fall asleep. Many system pop-ups appeared in front of him, making him wonder about the revolving door, and he was irritated by the noise. He told the system to let him deal with the 2 beasts in front of him first and shut up. The system revealed that he was a player named Lai Tian Ran, but he was preoccupied with telling the animals around him to get away. He slowly let go of the axe, wishing that at least Han would survive. Then the system signaled a successful match in the apocalypse survival game. Suddenly, he found himself submerged underwater while hearing the system announcing that the apocalyptic game had successfully loaded. He was identified as player Lai Tian Ran, and the shelter was a poorly managed manor level 1. The shelter's level 1 skill reward was the Eye of Truth. His class was B, and the points required to upgrade to fortress level were 8 million. Then he saw a shining light, which made him wake up and return to reality, leaving him surprised that he was still alive. He immediately sat up, fully aware that he had been pierced by the bull's horn. He noticed that the torn clothes and bloodstains were still there, but all his wounds had disappeared, leaving him wondering about the mysterious circumstances and the whereabouts of the bull and Xiao Bai. As he recalled being pierced by the bull's horn and the pain he felt, he massaged his head. Looking to his side, he was shocked to see the bull cut in half, and on the other side, Xiao Bai lay motionless. He wondered what had happened after he lost consciousness because the injuries inflicted on the animals were beyond human capability. Suddenly, he remembered the sensation of being possessed by the system and felt an electrical surge through his body. The system indicated that his status had been activated, and he punched Xiao Bai, who had been biting his neck, sending it flying toward the wall. Then he grabbed the axe on the ground and attacked the bull with it. The bull screamed in pain, but he stared at it unconsciously while his own wounds slowly healed. He leaped toward the bull and swung his axe at it once again. A blinding light hit his eyes, bringing him back to reality, but he was overwhelmed by intense pain throughout his body, causing him to scream and catch his breath to calm down. He realized that he had died once but was brought back to life, and the ability to heal and create explosions was not his own. It was likely the result of the so-called system, which was difficult for him to accept as reality. The system displayed that the shelter had been successfully bound, and the mall points had been activated. Beginners' rewards had been distributed, and players were requested to check them. He was puzzled, looking at the messages, but then he felt another electric shock, and the system revealed that the first round of the destruction season had arrived. There were still 30 days until the next round of the destruction season, during which natural disasters would occur, and the shelter was the only haven he could rely on. His mission was to survive the game and make his shelter the strongest possible castle, making him wonder if the system's information was directly implanted in his brain. Realizing that it was the first round of the destruction season, he understood that this was just the beginning, and the first round had poisoned the land that humans depended on for survival. This made him wonder how the second round would unfold. He approached Xiaobai and noticed that it had passed out. Recalling what the system had mentioned, he knew that both Xiaobai and the bull should have mutated after accidentally consuming radiation-poisoned plants. He decided to put Xiaobai on his back, knowing that after the mutation, their bodies had been strengthened, making them extremely ferocious. His first priority was to tie up Xiaobai and place it in a cage to prevent it from causing harm. He walked back into the farmhouse, thinking he should check on Han first. Descending the stairs, he tried to turn on the light but realized that the power system hadn't been restored yet, and there was no signal. The communication system also appeared to be down, but he knew he could handle it with a diesel generator. He looked around, wondering where Han was and why there was no movement. Then, he spotted Han's little feet behind a box, lying motionless, which caused him to panic and call her name. He hurriedly picked her up, asking her what was wrong. Fortunately, the system displayed that she was merely sleeping, which relieved him. When Han woke up, she felt something holding her and saw that it was her big brother. He asked her why she hadn't spread out the mattress and instead slept directly on the floor. She replied that she was obedient and had been waiting for him downstairs, but then there was a big white light, and she couldn't remember anything. She asked if he was okay, and he assured her not to worry because everything had been resolved. She inquired about Xiaobai's whereabouts, and he explained that Xiaobai was injured, so they couldn't meet for the time being. He suggested she should stay there and sleep because he had some matters to attend to which she agreed. After putting Han to sleep, he stood up and walked away. Moments later, he realized that there were no more mutant domestic animals around, which led him to wonder about the differences between the system and online games. He examined the beginner's bonus on the system, thinking it might include special weapons or skills, but it appeared to be insufficient, and he couldn't start the game until accumulating more points. He noticed a question mark on the system and clicked it, discovering that the common currency in this system was points. He also learned that the seed item could be planted in poisoned land, indicating it was expensive, which disappointed him as he considered himself poor. He understood that he could only check the stockpile of supplies at home, as those in direct contact with the ground had likely been contaminated in various ways. With the network disconnected, he believed it would take some time to recover, and he didn't have an optimistic outlook on the situation outside. After some contemplation, he remembered the bull and Xiaobai, leading him to conclude that all sources of pollution needed to be dealt with. He proceeded to burn down their animal's house, and he watched it burn to the ground. He returned to the farmhouse, opened one of its doors, turned on the lights, and found a shelf filled with various weapons. He selected a gun, concealed it in his jacket, left the communication radio near the sleeping Han, and walked outside the farmhouse. As he drove away in his truck, he noticed that he was being chased by mutated animals both in the air and on the land. He grew frustrated that these creatures were all attracted to him. He took out his gun, planning to eliminate them quickly, but then an army truck appeared behind him and opened fire, leaving him surprised. The army truck maneuvered to block his path, forcing him to panic and halt his truck to avoid a collision. The army truck's turret turned to point a machine gun at him, intensifying the tension. The soldier pointed the machine gun at him, and he raised his hands in the air. The soldier then reported over the radio that the road surface alarm had been lifted. He noticed there were military forces stationed near the base, suggesting that there might be a riot in the city. He wondered about Zhonglin's situation. The soldier advised him that it was dangerous outside and he should avoid wandering around. He explained that he had left home because there were no supplies and asked the soldier to brief him on the current situation in the city. The soldier reported over the radio that Area B was under attack by mutant cats and urgently needed reinforcements. He was instructed to go to the designated government supply point for needed provisions, as the city was no longer safe. He acknowledged the instructions and followed the army truck. As he drove, he noticed a helicopter flying above them. he realized that even military aircraft were being deployed, indicating the severity of the mutant creature situation. Despite his breakup with Zhonglin, he couldn't simply stand by in this post-apocalyptic world. He decided to check on her situation on the way because they had known each other once. Upon arriving in the destroyed city, he heard a soldier reporting another looting incident on 20th Street and the discovery of a female body at pawn number 20. As he looked around while driving, he noticed a destroyed police car in his truck's mirror. Apart from police cars, there seemed to be only ambulances left on that street. He witnessed ambulance personnel trying to assist an injured woman, shouting that the patient had lost too much blood and was going into shock due to another case of lung damage from food poisoning. The man yelled at his coworker to hurry up and prepare an adrenaline shot. But his coworker expressed frustration, explaining that they had run out of cardiac stimulants due to the overwhelming number of patients. Suddenly, a glass shattered, and the woman begged her injured husband not to fall asleep. She cried, telling him they were almost at the hospital. However, the man resignedly told his wife to forget it because there were no available beds, and they couldn't even get through to the emergency hotline. Witnessing this, he realized that the healthcare system was also partially paralyzed and couldn't keep up with the effects of radiation from the plants. He clenched the steering wheel in frustration, wondering if he could successfully guide Han through the challenges of the game. A moment later, at the designated emergency supplies site, a man took charge and directed the citizens, informing them that it was the government-designated emergency supply procurement location. He emphasized the need for everyone to willingly adhere to the rules, instructing them to form an orderly queue and avoid rushing. He also explained that each person had a purchase quota. Rice was priced at 160 per kilo, and vegetables were 280 per kilo. A police officer informed the crowd that each individual could buy 5 kilos of rice, 5 kilos of flour, and 1 kilo of vegetables by presenting a valid ID. However, the people waiting in line were furious with each other, and there were disputes over their positions in the line and the available food. On the side, a woman hugged her crying little girl who was desperately in need of food. The scene was chaotic, with people fighting for their place in line and for the available food, driven by their own selfishness. He knew that his ex-girlfriend's rented apartment was just around the corner to the left, so he drove there. However, a van suddenly pulled in front of him, taking him by surprise. He managed to maneuver his truck just in time. A man emerged from the van, looking around and holding something in his arm. The man knocked on his truck and inquired if he had come from the procurement site. He responded by asking the man what he wanted. The man pretended to recognize him and explained that he had seen him wandering around the market, desperately looking for food. The man then displayed a bag of vegetables and fruits, mentioning that he had watermelon, cucumber, pumpkin, tomatoes, and rice, and asked what he needed because he had it all. He examined the food and chuckled, teasing the man that if he dared to take a bite in front of him, he'd buy everything. The man retreated and inquired what he meant, expressing surprise that he didn't trust his friend. He asked if he could buy some of the vegetables from him, but he simply told the man to get out of his way. Still, the man shouted at him, asking why he spoke to him that way when he was a law-abiding citizen. He looked at the man irritably and pointed his gun at him, causing the man to panic. The man urged them to talk it out, emphasizing his compliance with the law. He sternly warned the man that if he caught him engaging in such heartless business, he wouldn't hesitate to use his gun, and no one would object. He then told the man to leave, which he did. The man stepped away, expressing his understanding, and put the food back in his van. He considered it a tough encounter and drove away as he passed. Later, he reached the destination he had in mind and exited his truck. He made his way to a partially destroyed apartment building and knocked on the door of his ex-girlfriend's apartment. However, there was no response. He reached for the spare key hidden under a rag, wondering if she wasn't at home. He used the key to open the door and called her name. To his surprise, he found the living room in disarray, which was unusual for her as she was typically a neat person. He surveyed the room and noticed contaminated fruits and medicine boxes on the table. He picked up a box of norfloxacin antibiotics, which treated various bacterial infections. He knew the local pharmaceutical company that produced it had a terrible reputation, making him wonder why she would buy from them. Examining the surroundings, he observed that there was no blood in the house, ruling out accidental poisoning. The apartment had been ransacked, yet it didn't fit her style. There were no signs of forced entry on the door, and everything seemed too deliberate. He wondered where she might have gone in this chaotic world. A few days later, he was at the farmhouse when the system displayed information about the city outskirts being a poorly managed manor. The shelter was rated as guesthouse grade, and the shelter's skill reward was the Eye of Truth. This skill allowed him to see all the information about objects and creatures displayed in front of him. Additionally, at level 1 shelter privileges, he had the remote control shelter, which meant he could always monitor the real-time status of the shelter and all items in the mall, and he could command it at any time. There was an area of 30 mu available for fishing, animal husbandry, planting, and construction. However, the profit and loss status was marked as a loss, and the greenhouse was in a dilapidated state. He realized that he needed to earn enough points to upgrade the farm items, and it shouldn't affect the development of the anti-radiation grade. He was busy digging the ground with a grape hoe when Hanhan excitedly called him over to show that the seeds had sprouted. He asked her to come and take a look, and she was amazed to see a tomato seedling. The time to maturity was 48 hours or 2 days, which made him happy because it meant the anti-radiation seeds worked as described by the system. The short maturity period was a good sign, and he believed that with more points, he and Hanhan could survive in the post-apocalyptic world. Hanhan mentioned that she had thought all the planted seeds had withered and she was worried they wouldn't have any food. She thanked him for obtaining the seeds and he assured her that her big brother always found a way. He asked her if she remembered the rules he had explained to her. She laughed and assured him not to underestimate her. She recalled the rules, not to eat food from anyone except him, not to leave the farm without his permission, and if she encountered any strange animals, she should hide. She forgot the next part, and he reminded her to keep an eye on Zio-Hai and not let it eat anything it wanted. She affirmed that she understood, and Zio-Hai barked in agreement. 2 days later, the system indicated that the anti-radiation crops were ripe, and he should collect them as soon as possible. He noticed that the harvest was good and picked one of the tomatoes. The system informed him that radiation-resistant tomatoes were nutritious and long-term consumption could effectively increase the body's condition. They also had a storage time of 30 days. He wondered if the tomatoes could improve his physique, so he took a bite. The tomato was sweet, and he felt a warm sensation throughout his body. The fatigue from the past few days of work vanished. In this food-scarce post-apocalyptic world, he not only had access to food but also received attribute bonuses as the crops upgraded. It seemed he was on his way to becoming a full-fledged farm owner in the system. In the system, unlocking permissions, making mall purchases, and upgrading shelters all depend on points, and different functions require varying amounts of points to unlock. The primary source of points is the exchange system, primarily used for recycling crops, livestock meat, and minerals. These items are divided into different price categories based on different grades, starting from the lowest anti-radiation grade crops, then ancient medical grade crops, followed by god-tier powerful crops, and the highest supreme god-tier enhanced crops. In level 1, anti-radiation grade crops are valued at 1 point per kilogram. Level 2 ancient medical grade crops are 100 points per kilogram. Level 3 god-tier powerful crops are 1,000 points per kilogram, and level 4 supreme god-tier enhanced crops are 100,000 points per kilogram. The system provides a one-stop service from supply and sales to recycling, and as long as they have enough points, they can rapidly turn the farm into a top-tier military base, which he was looking forward to. He was pleased with the tomatoes he had grown, which were just anti-radiation grade crops. 3 more grades of crops were yet to come, promising even more impressive additional effects. He looked around at the harvest of ancient medical grade crops and noticed that a few were ripe. However, he expected the 10% maturity rate of the ancient medical grade crops. The system showed him that these were ancient medicinal grade carrots with a 100% growth rate. The effect of these carrots was to clear all negative effects such as poison, illness, and irreversible damage caused by negative effects. Furthermore, their storage time was unlimited, which left him amazed and relieved, as they no longer needed to worry about medical treatment. Later, he finished arranging some of the harvested crops and planned to sell 70% of the food for points, keeping the rest as reserves in his backpack. The system asked him to confirm recycling 200 kilograms of radiation-resistant crops, and he did. The system indicated that recycling was successful, rewarding him with 2,000 points. In addition, 3 medicinal-grade crops were stored in the warehouse, along with 30 kilograms of anti-radiation grade crops. The system congratulated him for completing his first recycling and achieving the Master of Recycling achievement, rewarding him with a smart working robot, an agricultural type. He was surprised to receive a reward for his first recycling and thought the achievement system could offer some valuable items. He picked up the small robot and initially underestimated its usefulness. However, he noticed that it appeared to be staring at him, which made him wonder if it somehow sensed his thoughts. The robot then leaped from his hand and started to perform some tasks at an impressive speed. He began to consider the idea that his consciousness might be connected to the system, and the robot he obtained through the system could directly receive commands from his brain. He changed his mind, thinking that the robot was quite capable. This development led him to consider the possibilities of acquiring a combat robot in the future to enhance Hanhan's safety, which he found to be a convenient prospect. Later, he called Hanan because it was time to eat and told her to stop watching cartoons. Then he told her that today they had big chicken legs, making her excitedly look around together with Zio Hai. He told her that it was for celebrating the successful germination of the seeds, and she asked him if he didn't say they should be more careful with food from now on. He replied that they can start planting again, and they can eat some of the stored food from earlier, making her feel touched. He told her that she can eat freely at home, but if anyone outside finds out there is food at home, she'll be forbidden from eating for 3 days, making her surprised and shout that one day without food is already cruel enough. Then she happily told him that she won't tell anyone, to which he agreed and told her that they should eat because she must be craving something else after 2 days of instant noodles. Then he gave Zio Hai the first big chicken leg and thanked it for protecting Hanan and him. Hanan hugged Zio Hai and told him that it was the best. But then she felt sad and told him that she wondered if Zio Bai was feeling better now. He was silent for a moment, then told her not to worry about Zio Bai because it was just too injured right now and couldn't come to see her temporarily. But once Zio Bai healed, he'd let it come out to play with him, to which she agreed. Then she told Hanan to absolutely not go to the attic to disturb Zio Bai's rest, to which she agreed. While behind the farm, Zio Bai was aggressively growling. He was surprised when the system warned him that someone was trying to invade. He ordered the system to access the monitoring screen, and the system began to scan the invader's appearance. Then it showed him that the invader was male, 42 years old, unharmed, and the threat level is 3. He figured out who it was and wondered how his uncle Nan ended up there. He walks outside and asks the man named Nan if there is something wrong. Nan throws his cigar away while calling him young boss Lai and tells him that he has something to ask for help. He told him to speak, and Nan asked if he had any extra food on his farm because he really had no other choice. His house was robbed, so all the food he had stocked was gone, and the food sold in the market was too expensive. So, he shyly asks if he can lend him some food. He pitifully looks at Nan for a second and apologizes because he doesn't have much stock there either. The previous crops grown before were also destroyed in the mutation. Nan told him that it was alright, and he had also been to many relatives, and none of them had any extra food to lend him. Also, he was being shameless. He sighed and told Nan that he could give him some food, but not too much, and it was thanks for taking care of his family, making Nan light up and thanking him continuously. Then he gave Nan a bag of instant noodles and explained that it was the only one he could spare, so he should rest for a while and think of other ways. Nan agreed and thanked him again. He told Nan that he wished him good luck, but Nan told him that he wished good luck to them and walked away. He knew that the food he shared with Nan could only last his family 3 to 5 days. Although he was not short of food now, it was hard to predict how people would behave in the future, so he'd have to learn to hide his secrets. Also, he doesn't need all the regular vegetables stored in the freezer, so he planned to give them away quietly at night. Later, they were in his truck when Hanan told him that she wanted to watch Little Magic Fairy at home. He told her that the farm hadn't been cleared of mutated animals yet, so he didn't feel comfortable leaving her alone at home. She asked him where they were going, and he replied that they were going to her grandfather Nan, who used to come to their house to help, to bring him some food. She told him that she remembered that very enthusiastic grandfather, and there was also that older brother who gave her candy all the time. He reminded her that he told her that she could only eat 1 candy at most a day, making her panicky, telling him that no one sneaked her candy, and she remembered it wrong. A moment later, they arrived at Nan's neighborhood, and he noticed that it was too quiet, not even a dog could be heard barking. He stopped his truck, thinking that they must have been afraid of their domestic animals mutating, so they got rid of them. He came out of the truck, and Hanan also gave him her snack while he was busy tidying the food. Then, Nan shouted in panic, and Nan asked his son Zio Tian what he had done yesterday, but Zio Tian just coughed continuously, making him shocked. Then they saw Zio Tian coughing out blood, making Nan cry for his son in worry, asking him if he wasn't better just now and why he was getting worse again. But Zio Tian just vomited blood, making him wonder what happened to him. Hanan worriedly asked him if her grandfather Nan's son was going to die because he vomited a lot of blood, and he whispered to her that it was okay, so she should stop looking. He knows that those symptoms are similar to accidentally eating a radioactive vegetable, making him wonder if the dry foods he gave to Nan ran out so quickly. But then he remembers the medicinal grade carrot and thinks that it was the perfect test subject, and whether Zio Tian survives or not is up to him. On the other hand, Nan worriedly lays his son down and shouts that those damn doctors in the hospital said there are no beds left. They also said that even if there were beds, it would not be possible to cure him. Zio Tian grabs his neck in pain and cries, making Nan cryingly ask him what he should do. But Zio Tian's eyes roll up while coughing continuously. Suddenly, something is thrown on their window and it lands on the bed. Nan furiously asks who the hell threw it and tells them to get out of there, but Zio Tian manages to tell his father to wait a minute and points to the thing that landed on the bed. Nan tells his son not to move because he will take a look at it. When Nan opens it, he is shocked and excitedly shouts that it is vegetables, fresh vegetables. Then Nan notices a paper ball on the vegetables, and when he opens it, he sees a carrot inside with words written on the paper. Nan reads the letter, saying if he doesn't want Xiao Tian to die, she should feed him that carrot. Nan angrily asks if that person is crazy and shouts that the big hospitals can't treat Xiao Tian, but that person is making fun of him with a carrot. Then Nan cries, asking what is the use of having fresh vegetables now, and tells his poor son that his father is useless. Xiao Tian's vision slowly fades, but he still manages to call his father and hold his father's hand while telling him that he wants to try it because he'd still die even if he lay there like it, but he wants to live. Nan is stunned for a moment and painfully agrees to his son's request. He then tells his son that the hospital couldn't cure him anyway, but he can't just watch him die in front of him. Then he puts the carrot in Xiao Tian's mouth and tells his son to chew on it quickly. Xiao Tian chews the carrot in his mouth, but suddenly Xiao Tian screams and twitches in pain, making Nan panic and worriedly call his son. Then Xiao Tian vomits blood on the side of his bed and continues to vomit until his pale skin begins to color again. Nan notices it and happily cries while telling Xiao Tian that it is great. He smiles, hearing that Xiao Tian is getting better. Then the lamp outside slowly lights up until it completely has light. He notices that the power is back on, and the signal should be good, so he calls his girlfriend Zhang Lin. But the phone just continues ringing until the phone tells him that the number he dialed is currently unavailable, so he should try again later. Meanwhile, in the car, Lin's phone rang in her pocket, and the driver passenger was annoyed about it, asking whose phone was ringing. The man gets the phone and realizes that the signal is back, but the driver tells the man that it belongs to the woman in the back, so he better turn off her phone. The man asks the driver how much food they get after it was delivered, and the man replies that they wouldn't have to worry about food and drink for at least a few months, making the man laugh and tell the driver that working with his fat brother is really exciting. The man asks the driver what he thinks they want those people for, but the driver replies he doesn't care, and all they do is take the money and shut up. Meanwhile, on the road, Hanan tells him that her big brother is very strong because she saw how much blood Xiao Tian vomited. But just by eating a carrot, Xiao Tian became fine. Then, Xiao Tian's body quickly changed from gray to blue, which was cool. Hanan continued to talk to him with her vivid imagination, making him think that Hanan loves animation a lot, and even her descriptions were graphic. But then, something jumped on his truck roof, causing him to momentarily lose control and wonder what happened. Suddenly, a monster's hand appeared in front of them, and a monster with red eyes glared at them. A mutated monkey growled at them, making him panic. He told Hanan to hold on tight and then moved his truck to the side to make the monkey fall, but it held onto the truck tightly and tried to attack him from inside. He pulled out his gun, shouting for it to get down, and fired his gun where it was holding, but it jumped in front of his truck. He started his truck in anger and moved it forward, but the monkey still clung to his truck. He protected Hanan with his other arm and slammed his truck into the nearby tree to hit the monkey in front. Then he pointed his gun at it and shot it in the head, making its head explode. He stepped out of his truck and checked the dead monkey lying in front of it. He threw it away, but then he noticed a serial number on its arm, making him wonder where it came from, knowing that there were neither breeding farms nor zoos nearby. Then he remembered Tianren Pharmaceuticals' drug brand, realizing it was the only thing nearby. On the other hand, in a large building, there were many animals flying around it. Meanwhile, in Tianren's house, he told Hanan to watch some animation because he had something to deal with, to which she agreed. Then he walked towards their farmhouse basement and sat down in front of Xiao Bai's cage. Xiao Bai growled at him in anger, but he just sighed while wearing his gloves. Then the system asked him if he wanted to take out the medicinal carrot, and he replied yes. He forcefully put the carrot into Xiao Bai's mouth, thinking that since the medicine could remove toxins from irradiated vegetables, Xiao Bai could definitely return to his old self. After he put all the carrot in Xiao Bai's mouth, he let go and hoped the carrot would work. Xiao Bai furiously glared and growled at him, but then Xiao Bai screamed loudly. On the other hand, Hanan heard a loud thunder sound, causing her to shake in fear. She stood up, thinking it was a big thunderbolt, and felt a little scared, wondering why her big brother wasn't there yet. Then she decided to find her big brother. A moment later, she found her brother in the basement and planned to sneak up on him. She walked closer to him in silence and surprised him from behind, making him jump a little in shock. He worriedly looked at her, but she just laughingly asked him if he was scared. When she was about to tell him something, he saw something on the ground. She was stunned in horror to see Xiao Bai on the ground, covered in blood. She lost her balance, making him worried, and told her to pull herself together. She tearfully asked him why it happened and whether they had carrots that could save lives. Then she told him to feed it to Xiaobai quickly. He explained to her that carrots can't save living beings that have been mutated, and Xiaobai was. But before he could finish his sentence, she told him that she didn't want it, and she didn't want Xiaobai to die in vain. She screamed Xiaobai's name in pain and cried loudly. A moment later, they burned Xiaobai's body and buried it near the tree. Han was silent the whole time. He grabbed her hand and told her that it was getting colder there, so they should go back. He called Han to come for dinner and told her that it was all her favorite food. But she just watched anime without looking at him. He sighed and told Xiaobai to stay with Han in the house, to which it barked in agreement. Outside, the system showed him that radiation-resistant grade crops had matured, and he should harvest them in time. He clicked on the system, and it showed him that the crops were harvested. The radiation-resistant grade crops weighed 500 kilograms, and the ancient medicinal grade crops weighed 10 kilograms. His mini-robot jumped on his shoulder while he was busy looking at the system, and it showed him that the points were redeemed successfully. He upgraded his level 1 dilapidated greenhouse to a level 2 ordinary greenhouse. But then the system warned him that his defense shelter was only rated at level 3 and could only protect against the intrusion of small wild animals, which was an extremely high risk, and it was recommended to establish a defense system as soon as possible. He agreed with the system and thought that his top priority should be to improve the safety of the farm first. With the current crop level, point growth was very high, so the expansion of production could be delayed. He upgraded their wall reinforcement from level 1 to level 2, purchased a perimeter power grid, and obtained a radar parade level ×1. He realized that there were not many points left, but he still needed to get some mechanical guards for Han. Then he noticed something in the item shop, but it cost 3,500 points, which made him frustrated because he didn't have enough points for it. He knew that the points would almost be enough if he sold the grain stored in the warehouse. If he ran out of points, he could earn them again. So, he decided to get those 2 robots first and began to purchase them. The system showed that his purchase was successful, and he got one level 1 hummingbird, a green building head Panchi with a load of 100/100, damage of 0/100, speed of 5, damage of 3, defense of 1, and its attack method is shooting. The other one is one level 2 hound, a level 2 combat warrior with a load of 50/50, fuel capacity of 100/100, speed of 4, damage of 6, defense of 5, and its attack methods are burn, shoot, and bite. He mentally commanded his hummingbird warrior to crush the fallen leaves, and it fired bullets that shattered the leaves, impressing him with its precision. He was glad to have an air patrol sniper at his disposal and decided to test its ground combat strength. He ordered the hound warrior to blow a huge stone. It gathered its power in its mouth and blew it towards the stone, breaking it into pieces, making him feel much more relieved. A moment later, he went inside and called Han, who was still watching television. A nose appeared next to her, and she looked back to see a robot dog. He told her that from now on, she should let it follow her around and protect her, and she should give it a name. He offered her the name Xiaobai, to which she sadly agreed. Meanwhile, in Tianren Pharmaceutical Building, a man reported that the out-of-control samples had been cleaned up, and only number 7's data were steadily rising. Also, it could now easily punch through 5mm thick steel plates. The man in the suit asked about the situation on the other side, and the man replied that their Vice President Ren was already very dissatisfied with their failure to donate medical equipment. If she found out, it would be bad, and reporting it to the head office would be even worse. But the man in the suit grabbed his seat, and the general manager of Tianren Pharmaceutical, Liang Tianyu, sat down smiling. Tianyu told the man that it was just a girl with a minor background, and besides, it was done secretly. If she wanted to investigate, she'd have to know where to start. The man agreed with Tianyu but reminded him that the head office was watching. Tianyu ordered the man to instruct Chen Nan to keep an eye on Ren Xiao and not let her disrupt his business, to which the man agreed. After the man left, Tianyu turned around in his chair and smiled, thinking that maybe there would be a great treasure. A moment later, a lady asked the receptionist where Liang Tianyu was, and the receptionist apologized to her while calling her Vice President Ren. She told Ren that Tianyu was not in the company at the moment and that she was making things very difficult for them. However, Ren just slammed Tianyu's office door open and shouted at him, asking what was going on in his head. She told him that now that the entire southern region's medical system was paralyzed, as a medical company, he should lead his staff to actively cooperate with the hospital and donate equipment and medicines instead of being busy with animal experiments. He responded that it was the manager's office, and it was not appropriate for her to barge in like that. He also argued that as a businessman, his purpose was to profit from everything, and he didn't think that today's medical treatment could do anything about that worldwide disease. She was confused to hear it, but he told her that she was also a shareholder of the company and enjoyed her right to dividends. Then he asked her if she could imagine how rewarding it would be if they could develop a solution. She lit up and asked Tianyu if his research had made progress, mentioning that even the Yanwang federal government had not developed any effective drugs yet. She expressed her intention to visit his lab, and her pendant necklace made a sound. However, he told her he was just kidding and asked how they could develop a solution so quickly. He suggested that with more cooperation and manpower investment, progress would be faster. She told him she would go to the lab later to check on the progress, but she wanted to see it first before fully cooperating with the project. He welcomed her and arranged for a personal escort. She agreed to go, and he said he would see her out. Later, a man whispered to her that the technical team said her time in the office was too short, and they could only do a rough scan. He also mentioned that the entrance to the secret laboratory was likely not in the office. She became upset and called Tianyu an old fox. She then asked if they got a statement from the captured scientist, and the man replied no, as they were blindfolded every time they went in and out. However, they did obtain the key card, earning the man's praise. He gave her the key card, making her wonder where else it could be other than those places. She thought that the most dangerous place might be the safest and believed she knew where it was. Later, the director introduced himself as Tu Zai, in charge of accompanying and explaining everything to her. He would also show her around. She suggested they check on the progress of the experimental subjects first, to which Tu agreed and showed her the way. They arrived at the captured animal, and Tu explained that it was number 7, the only subject in the experimental batch that didn't go berserk, with its power increasing tenfold. While it wouldn't be as mindlessly bloodthirsty as a failure, it was still unstable with some aggressiveness. However, during their conversation, a man called the director in a panicked manner, and he whispered something to Tu, surprising him. While the two of them were busy whispering, she observed them with a smile. Tu apologized to her because of an emergency and said he couldn't continue to accompany her. He suggested that a colleague behind him could accompany her instead. She told Tu that it was alright since it was just a routine check, and she would walk around for a while and then leave. Tu was worried that it might go against the rules, but she reassured him that they were all under surveillance coverage and asked him what he was worried about. She encouraged Tu to go quickly and not to delay because it seemed important. Tu agreed and told her they would be watching out for her safety at all times. Then they both left. She clicked the device on her ear and told the man that it was time to take action, and the man agreed. The man clicked his computer to disable surveillance and told her that it was covered. She ordered the man to scan the place for their hideout, and the man instructed her to check the northeast corner, where there should be a hollow in the wall or something that could be pressed down. He also told her that she had 30 minutes. She pressed down the wall and opened a hideout, and she was shocked to see many humans in capsules. The man asked her how it was, and she replied that it was worse than predicted. He asked if he needed to contact the head office for intervention, but she told him to wait a minute. Then she looked up and saw a lady in a tube with a fishtail. Beneath the tube, she read that the lady's name was Zhongling and a description, which made her furious at Tianyu. Meanwhile, on Tianran's farm, the system showed him that his radiation-resistant grade corn was ready to be picked. Hanhan was looking at them in amazement, and he told her to come and help him finish work early for dinner. She picked a corn and excitedly said she wanted to eat it grilled later. He asked if she was hungry already, and she replied that she was too hungry to pick the corn. He told her to gather some dry wood, and he'd make her some grilled corn with butter, which made her jump with excitement. A moment later, they were grilling corn when Hanhan asked what would happen if she kept eating like this and turned into a fat pig. He knew that Hanhan's appetite had increased recently and told her that the special crop could enhance their physical fitness. As their physique grows, their nutrient requirements would become higher, and since they were still growing, eating more food wouldn't make them gain weight. It would help them grow taller. The system showed him that Hanhan's strength was 10, intelligence was 11, speed was 11, and endurance was 11/11. He thought that after eating radiation-resistant vegetables for a few days, both his and Hanhan's physical data had increased a lot. He wondered if Hanhan kept eating like this, she wouldn't turn into King Kong Barbie, and he worried about his lovely little sister. However, he was confused about what he was overthinking. She exclaimed that the grilled corn was so good, and he told her that he would make her a spicy one. He thought that with their shelter, even if Hanhan's appetite became comparable to Luffy's in the future, he could still afford it. But then the system showed him that a visitor was coming, making him wonder who was visiting him at such a time. He saw Xiao Tian in front of their gate, holding the food he gave him, and he wondered what Xiao Tian was doing. He walked toward the gate and asked Xiao Tian why he was there. Xiao Tian handed him the bag of food and explained that he had given some instant noodles to his family the other day, and his father said they should return the favor. Additionally, his family had just received some food, so he brought it to him. He replied, "Alright," knowing it was what he had given to their family, and he didn't think he had helped the wrong person. He asked Xiao Tian where he had obtained all that food, and Xiao Tian replied that he found it in their yard. It might have been sent quietly by a relative or some kind of person who snuck it in. Then Xiao Tian shyly mentioned that he just wanted to repay the favor and had something else to ask him if it was okay. He encouraged him to speak, and Xiao Tian explained that he had heard about a new grain shopping center opened on the outskirts of the southern side, with plenty of stock available. He wanted to borrow his truck to go buy some. He agreed and told Xiao Tian that he could borrow it. However, Xiao Tian informed him that he didn't have his driver's license and the shopping center was in a remote location. He asked if he could drive him there. Panicky, Xiao Tian assured him it wasn't too far away. He realized that Xiao Tian was not only borrowing the truck but also the driver. Xiao Tian also assured him that it wouldn't take too long and begged for his help. He had been stuck on the farm recently and had initially planned to visit the shopping center in a couple of days to inquire about the situation. However, since it was earlier than expected, he decided to drive Xiao Tian there along with him. With the mechanical guards at home, he felt relieved even if Han was alone. Because, after all, with Xiao Bai's combat power, it would be able to take care of even a small group. He agreed to Xiao Tian's request and told him that they were old acquaintances. However, he emphasized the need to return before noon to cook for Han, to which Xiao Tian agreed and apologized for the trouble. He instructed Xiao Tian to wait for him as he would get the truck ready, and Xiao Tian agreed. A moment later, he told Han to stay at home and not open the door if anyone calls. He assured her he'd be back soon. She told him not to worry because Da Bai, which means big in Chinese, is awesome. She was referring to Xiao Bai, the robot dog. He asked her how it became Da Bai, and she explained it was because it's an upgraded version, and she had tested it, watching it blow up big rocks with a Bam Bam. He told her that she could only use Da Bai in case of emergencies in the future, as it could be very dangerous otherwise. She agreed and told him that she wouldn't blow up rocks anymore, which made him silent for a moment. He patted her head and assured her that he and her brother Xiao Tian would go to the shopping center and come back with candy for her. She asked if Xiao Tian was there because she wanted to say hello, but he asked her why she wanted to do that and reminded her that she couldn't reveal Da Bai in front of outsiders. He pinched her cheek, and she assured him she understood because she was already 6 years old and not a child anymore. She added that except for her big brother, no one talks to her at home, which makes her feel suffocated. Then they drove out of the farm with the truck window down, and Han excitedly looked at Xiao Tian. When she was about to say something to him, Tian Ran put his hand on her head and pulled her hair while telling her to get out of the car and let Xiao Tian in so they could leave early and he could be back in time to cook for her. They drove away, leaving Han furiously calling him a stinky big brother and shouting that she hadn't even finished saying hello. But then she walked back, thinking to forget it and watch cartoons. On the other hand, Tian Ran and Xiao Tian were busy driving away. He thought Han was a bit impulsive, but he knew she had a big mouth. The road was silent for a moment, and then Xiao Tian asked if it was okay for Han to be at home alone because the world was very chaotic now, and he was afraid that if some bad guys targeted the farm, Han would be in danger. Tian Ran asked Xiao Bai, "Who's gonna look at my little shabby farm with no money or food?" Xiao Tian asked if he hadn't left some self-defense tools for Han, and he explained that Han was only 6 years old. Even if she had a self-defense weapon, she wouldn't know how to use it. He was confident that there was no safer place than their farm at the moment. He assured Xiao Tian that he had electrified the farm gate, so no one could break in, and he shouldn't worry. Xiao Tian replied that it was a relief, and then he grabbed his phone from his pocket and texted someone. Tian Ran peeked to see what he was doing, and Xiao Tian noticed him. Xiao Tian put his phone back in his pocket and explained that he was afraid he didn't have enough money, so he'd borrow some from his friends. Tian Ran remained silent. Meanwhile, on their farm, Han was excitedly shouting Rainbow Warrior Attack and Lemon Yellow Super Evolution Golden Yellow with Xiao Hai. She shouted that her brother Xiao Tian could also change his color and grabbed Xiao Hai's face, wondering if he could be a member of the Rainbow Warriors like her brother. This made Xiao Hai confused. She shouted that last time she and her big brother saw Xiao Tian as green, and this time he was red, which she thought was a lot of fun. Meanwhile, on the road, he handed Xiao Tian some money and told him to take it. Xiao Tian seemed confused, and he explained that he didn't have much money either, so Xiao Tian could take it for now. Xiao Tian panically replied no and said he had already received a lot of help from him, so he didn't know if he could accept more money. However, he insisted, slamming the money into Xiao Tian's hand and telling him to keep it. He also advised Xiao Tian to stop talking nonsense because they still had to drive. Xiao Tian expressed his gratitude and promised to repay his kindness. The navigator showed them that they should go straight ahead for 500 meters, then turn right in 300 meters, and at 200 meters, they should reach a fork in the road. Finally, 100 meters ahead, they needed to turn right. However, Xiao Tian suddenly grabbed the wheel and suggested going to the left instead, as he thought the road on the right appeared to be closed. He gave him a strange look and forcefully stopped the truck. He was frustrated and slammed his hand on the sofa, insisting that the road on the right couldn't be closed without a major natural disaster since it was a main road in the township that he often traveled on. He asked Xiao Tian where he had heard the news. Xiao Tian explained that a friend had told him, but he demanded to know which friend he was referring to and urged him to call that friend so he could hear it directly. Xiao Tian, grabbing his coat, begged him to trust him just this once and assured him that he wouldn't harm him. He requested that they turn left before it was too late. He was irritated by Xiao Tian's behavior but decided to turn the truck and head in the direction Xiao Tian suggested. On the other hand, someone became upset when they noticed the truck had switched lanes. The man shouted that something had happened, and the driver angrily exclaimed how dare that little rascal go back on his word. The passenger in the car called the man Nan and asked what they should do. Nan activated the device on his ear, stating that he was prepared and told his other men that the target was heading toward them. He reminded them that Liang had instructed them to stay alive. The man acknowledged his orders and confirmed he understood. Nan instructed the driver to turn around and block their path while the second team attacked from the rear. He wanted to see if they could escape today. On the other hand, Tian Ran was driving fast, his anger mounting, and he angrily asked Xiao Tian what was happening, insisting that he should tell him. Xiao Tian continuously apologized, feeling guilty for selling him out, and admitted that it was all his fault. He explained that he had no choice because they had taken his father captive. Tian Ran told Xiao Tian to calm down first and asked who they were and what they wanted from him. Xiao Tian replied that these people were from Tianren Pharmaceuticals, and they knew he had the medicine for poisoning. They used him to lure him away from the farm, and while they were gone, they captured Hanhan to force him to submit. Tian Ran was stunned and furious, telling Xiao Tian that Hanhan was only 6 years old, and he couldn't believe they had kidnapped a child. Xiao Tian explained that he didn't know, and they had threatened him with his father's life, leaving him with no choice. However, he noticed something behind them and was surprised to see a car waiting. He sped up, and a panicked Xiao Tian shouted that they had already caught up with them. Tian Ran told Xiao Tian to be quiet, then angrily questioned if all the information he had provided was just a test to determine whether the farm was protected, and whether he was in contact with those people. Even when he was playing on his phone earlier, he was communicating with them. Xiao Tian apologized and implored Tian Ran to hand over the medicine because there were too many of them, and they wouldn't be able to escape. Tian Ran expressed his deep disappointment in Xiao Tian, insisting that he didn't want to kill him, but he couldn't believe what he had done to Hanhan. Xiao Tian tearfully apologized and said he regretted his actions, but with his father in danger, there was no turning back. He emphasized that they were about to be caught, so he should give them the medicine. Tian Ran gripped the steering wheel of his truck in frustration and told Xiao Tian that he would settle the score with him later. However, unfortunately, neither of them had a chance of leaving his farm alive. Before this, Xiao Tian remembers his father excitedly telling him that he is finally feeling better, but he frightened his father to death. He told his father that he couldn't believe he had actually survived, and his father asked him what he had eaten that made him feel better. He replied that he was so hungry he couldn't stand it anymore, and then he found an apple in the cellar that didn't seem to be contaminated. His father told him that he was really that desperate, but asked him how he dared to eat anything from the cellar when he knew they all touched the ground. He told his father that they had been eating nothing but thin porridge for several days, so he wanted to take a chance. Otherwise, he would starve to death sooner or later. However, his father just scolded him and told him to stop talking nonsense because he had borrowed some food, and they had also received a shipment of food. Furthermore, there was a magical potion that saved his life, and it must be a gift from the gods because they couldn't bear to see him suffer so much. There were many people who had died from accidentally eating poisonous vegetables, but he was the only one who survived. So, they must visit their ancestors' graves later to thank them for their blessings. But he thought that if there really was a god, he shouldn't allow such disasters to happen in the world, and the potion was given to them by someone who didn't want their identity revealed. His father asked if he was still hungry, but he just couldn't believe how much food that man could actually provide them, while their family was left to starve without even the basic necessities of survival. So, he felt that life was unfair. Then, he stood up with a thought in his mind and rushed out of their house. His father asked where he was going, and he replied that he'd be back soon. His father tried to tell him that he hadn't fully recovered yet and should rest at home, but he told his father to leave him alone. A moment later, he arrived at a house and the man inside shouted that he was coming, so he should stop knocking and ask who was disturbing him. He called the man Mayo, and Mayo was shocked to see him and asked him what he wanted. He looked down and saw himself covered in blood, so he explained to Mayo that their home was robbed, and he just wanted to check the surveillance video of their house. Mayo asked him what he was talking about and pointed to the device on the roof. He explained that it was the one, and he remembered its 360-degree wireless monitoring. Mayo agreed, and he asked Mayo to lend it to him to see how badly he was beaten by the thief. Mayo told him to hurry up because it was his bedtime. He started to review the footage, knowing that the camera had a perfect view of his alleyway while Mayo was sleeping beside him. He looked at the screen, wondering who it was, and he was surprised to see the license plate on the truck near his house. Afterward, he returned home, and his father asked him what he had been up to. He told his father that he figured out who saved his life. His father inquired, asking him who it was. He replied that it was their young boss, Lai. He had checked the CCTV and found that the times when the truck arrived and departed matched the time of his rescue. His father exclaimed that their young boss Lai was indeed a kind person, providing them with food and saving their lives. But he hesitated for a moment and then asked his father if he had heard the news that Tianren Group was offering a generous reward to those who find a cure. His father called him a troublemaker and asked him what he was trying to accomplish. He explained that he was simply trying to make life a bit easier for both of them in this harsh world. He asked his father how long the little food they had left would last and what they would do when it ran out. This surprised his father, but he continued by questioning whether his father expected their boss, young Lai, to keep providing them with food. In response, his father slapped him hard, accusing him of wanting to repay Tianren's kindness with ingratitude. He threatened to break his legs if he dared to leave. However, he asked his father if he didn't understand their current situation and told him that if they wanted to survive, they could only rely on themselves, and he was just doing what he had to do to stay alive. Back on the road, Tianren was frustrated because the enemy was closely following him, and he couldn't shake them off. 2 more cars blocked his path, so he forcefully stopped his truck to avoid hitting the cars in front of him. Men emerged from their cars, and the other car behind him blocked his way out. He got out of the car holding Xiao Tian. The man teasingly asked if he was Lai Tianren and introduced himself as Chen Nan, affiliated with Tianren Pharmaceutical Company. He explained that they used this special method to meet him but had no hidden agenda. They knew he had the cure for the poisoning pandemic and wanted to discuss cooperation. They proposed that if he provided the cure, they would join forces and make money together, which would result in substantial profits. He asked Chen Nan what would happen if he refused, and Chen Nan replied that there were only 2 options now. The first was that he voluntarily cooperated with them, leading to a happy outcome where they could all make money with a smile on their faces. He inquired about the second option, and Chen Nan stated that they could obtain the cure for themselves and could always make him talk. He explained to Chen Nan that he had obtained the cure for the poisoning epidemic purely by chance, and there was only 1 dose. He had already used it on Xiao Tian, and he apologized to Chen Nan for them having made the journey for nothing. He noticed that the people with Chen Nan didn't have guns, and Xiao Tian was already useless to them. If they had guns, they could have simply injured him without the need for further discussion. Chen Nan took out his phone and told him that it seemed he wouldn't be moved even if he saw his own demise. Chen Nan then called his men, asking if they were at the farm gate, and ordered them to enter and apprehend the little girl, then feed her the poisonous fruits. Chen Nan playfully asked him what the point was of electrifying his broken fence when their men were experts in insulation protection. He advised him that if he intended to go against Tianren Company, he needed to understand his own value and cooperate willingly to make money together. However, Chen Nan was taken aback when he emitted a powerful light and seriously conveyed his hatred for threats, making Chen Nan wonder how such a humble farmer could possess such terrifying eyes. He cautioned them that they should be thankful they hadn't invaded the farm because with him around, they could extend their lives, at least for a little while. Chen Nan told him to stop talking and to cooperate so the little girl would survive. Chen Nan believed that there were many of them, so they shouldn't fear him, but he simply stared at them. This led Chen Nan to conclude that he wouldn't cooperate. Chen Nan then ordered his men to sever his limbs and leave him alive. Meanwhile, on the farm, the men in suits were outside the property, using an excavator to destroy the wall. This noise made Han Han really mad, and she shouted that it was so loud she couldn't enjoy her cartoon in peace. She wished she could blow the heads off those bad guys. Meanwhile, on the road, Tianren was engaged in a battle with the men, and one by one, the men were being thrown back towards Chen Nan. Chen Nan looked back in surprise and noticed that the man had a flat stomach, leaving him wondering what was going on. He recalled that anti-personnel weapons were supposed to be found only on the farm, so his plan was to lure that guy out of his farm. Meanwhile, a man near the farm was looking through binoculars and noticed something was amiss at the farm. Rocks were being blown apart, and while it was a considerable distance, his best guess was that it involved explosive weaponry. Back on the road, Tianran attacked the men surrounding him. Chen Nan couldn't believe how powerful the farmer was. Tianran hadn't expected that the physical enhancements from the radiation-resistant crops would be so formidable. In just a few days of consuming those anti-radiation crops, his physical attributes had improved significantly. It wasn't just his strength and speed, even his bone density and reflexes had seen remarkable progress. He knew that in ancient times, there was a way to achieve mastery through the use of a sword, so Tianran was seemingly achieving mastery through his fists. Tianran decided to create some distance, believing he had tested his physical capabilities enough. He then pulled a gun from his jacket and aimed it at the men, taking them by surprise. Chen Nan realized he had been careless, assuming he wouldn't need firearms. He was surprised to see that Tianran had a gun too. Chen Nan warned him that he shouldn't mess with the influential figure backing him and should consider the consequences if he laid a hand on him. He believed that as long as he could get close to Tianran, the gun would be nothing more than a piece of scrap metal. He told Chen Nan that he was right and proceeded to shoot the men, informing Chen Nan that he was still somewhat useful. However, there was no need to spare the others. Chen Nan fell to the ground, bullets whizzing by, and he was hit near the ears, causing him to shout in pain while the other men were shot and killed. Chen Nan quickly fled, thinking he should hide in the woods and wait until Tianran ran out of bullets. Tianran tried to follow Chen Nan while firing at him, but Chen Nan managed to find cover behind a nearby rock. Chen Nan believed that Tianran had stopped and thought that Tianran must have run out of bullets, which he considered a good thing. He planned to hide for a while and then surprise attack Tianran, thinking he still had a chance of winning. Unbeknownst to Chen Nan, Tianran was actually above him, examining the system with a smile. He opened his inventory to retrieve his pistol from the warehouse and reloaded it. Chen Nan heard the sound of the reload and looked back, asking why he still had a bullet. He questioned if Tianran was a martial artist, but Tianran simply shot Chen Nan. Meanwhile, on the farm, the robot bird shot the men outside. The system informed Han that, following her instructions, the last intruder's head had been blown off and asked for her next instruction. Han worried that her big brother would be upset if he found out what she had done and might not like her anymore. She shook her head, determined to get rid of the evidence outside the door before her big brother returned. Meanwhile, on the road, Chen Nan was bleeding and injured. He admitted to Tianran that he had made a mistake by using the child to threaten him and begged him to stop tormenting him. He assured Tianran that he had revealed everything. Tianran offered him two choices, a quick and painless death or a glimmer of hope. He could cure him and continue. Since he had plenty of bullets and time, it was up to Chen Nan to decide. Chen Nan asked him to ask his questions, and Tianran inquired about the identity of the person behind him. Chen Nan replied that it was Liang Tianyu, the CEO of Tianrun. Tianran wiped the blood from his face, realizing that it was the person who had inflated drug prices, which explained Tianyu's ruthlessness. He then asked if there were others involved besides Liang Tianyu, and Chen Nan said that Tianyu was solely responsible for the matter and had kept it well hidden. Even high-ranking executives within the company were unaware of it. Tianyu had been having disagreements with the vice presidents in the company recently, and he planned to use the issue to increase his authority. He wanted to impress the headquarters and push the other vice president out of the southern city branch. Tianran realized that Tianran Pharmaceutical, the company monopolizing Southern City, was just a subsidiary of a larger group. He slapped Chen Nan, urging him to wake up and asking if Tianyu had reported the matter to the headquarters. Chen Nan replied that Tianyu hadn't because the other vice president had connections at the headquarters, and Tianyu didn't dare escalate the issue to them. Leaking information to that vice president would ruin Tianyu's plans. He knew that the news hadn't spread widely yet, so solving the matter wouldn't be too difficult. He then told Chen Nan that he needed one last thing and ordered Xiao Tian to take him to see Liang Tianyu. Later, in the office, the phone on the desk rang, and Tianyu answered it. He asked the person, Chen Nan, on the other line if the mission was complete. Chen Nan replied in the affirmative, explaining that they had the target under control, but the target insisted on seeing him and an old man before revealing anything. Tianyu was angry and scolded Chen Nan, considering them quite useless if they couldn't handle such a small matter without his personal involvement. Chen Nan apologized and mentioned that Tianran was very tight-lipped, and they had lost a few of their brothers in the process. Tianyu agreed and instructed Chen Nan to take Tianran to warehouse number 78. He said he'd be there shortly and wanted to see. But Chen Nan hung up the phone before he could finish his sentence. This made Tianyu angrily throw the phone on the sofa and swear that once he was at the headquarters, he would replace Chen Nan immediately. Meanwhile, in the car, the man holding the phone hung up, and Xiao Tian thanked Tianran profusely. However, Tianran informed Xiao Tian that his father, Nan, was just an incidental acquaintance, so he shouldn't get too sentimental. They drove away while Xiao Tian cried and continuously apologized to him. A minute later, they arrived at the warehouse and entered inside. Tianyu, who was holding Old Nan, asked Xiao Tian why it was just him and inquired about the whereabouts of Chen Nan and the messenger. Xiao Tian replied that the messenger had been knocked out and left in the car, and Chen Nan had a stomach ache and went to the restroom. He further explained that Chen Nan was concerned Tianyu might grow impatient, so he asked Xiao Tian to bring him over first, with Chen Nan dressed in civilian clothes. Tianyu looked at the injured Chen Nan, mistaking him for Tian Ran, and laughed. He called on Tian Ran to speak up and implied that he hadn't struck hard enough. He mentioned that the old man was there, and if Tian Ran talked, he'd set him free. However, Old Nan was crying and tried to tell Tian Ran not to speak, as Tianyu wouldn't allow any of them to leave there alive. Tianyu became angry and kicked the old man to the ground, shouting at him to be honest, which left Xiao Tian shaking with anger. Tianyu asked Xiao Tian why he was staring and ordered him to bring Tian Ran over while the men continued to kick Old Nan. Suddenly, someone stepped on Tianyu's face and forcefully slammed him to the ground, surprising his men. Tian Ran pointed a gun at Tianyu's face and mentioned the difficulty of climbing the wall. The men worriedly called their boss, but he told them not to move, and Tianyu ordered them to stay back. Tianyu asked how this person had arrived, where Chen Nan was, and whether Chen Nan had betrayed him. He challenged the person to touch him, but Tian Ran questioned how someone of his intelligence had become the head of Tianran, and invested all his skills in being a heartless jerk. Tian Ran pointed out that his loyal subordinate was right there and indicated Chen Nan, who was in Xiao Tian's custody. Tianyu angrily called Tian Ran a little brat and threatened that if he touched him, he'd have them kill the stubborn old man immediately. However, Tian Ran agreed, saying that killing him would be more cost-effective than harming unrelated people. Xiao Tian shouted to Tian Ran to save Chen Nan. Tianyu then ordered his men to kill Old Nan, and he put his finger on the gun trigger. However, Tian Ran suddenly shot the men near Old Nan, leaving Tianyu asking his dying men if they were stupid. Well guys, that's the end of the video. If you like this video, comment part 2 in the comment section. Also subscribe to the channel, hit the bell and like the video. Thank you for watching and see you next time again.